Hello, thank you, Liliana, thank you, Danielle and Tracy, for inviting us to come here. It's very nice to be here. I'm on sabbatical now, so I'm a bit lost. This is my first Zoom class actually, it took me a while to get into the class, but I'm here. So yeah, first of all, well, so Liliana gave you an idea of what's the course will be about. It's one of the things that I find very exciting, also for myself, but I hope for you guys too, is that the course is going to be taught by Liliana and me. She's from the sciences, she's a biologist, and I'm from literature. So it's an interesting combination between someone from the humanities who reads a lot and analyzes what's going on with how people imagine and represent many of the problems that we are living today. Liliana, who actually takes a very different point of view in the same problems, for the same kind of problems. So one of the things that Liliana was saying now, for example, is very interesting, the globalizations that we're living today, right? But globalization, but it's important to remember also that the Amazon was always this kind of place where there were a lot of migrants, there were a lot of projects of transformation. These railroads were not, some of those railroads were actually built like at the beginning of the 20th century in the Amazon, and they were beginning to transform the region already as early as like 1910, for example. So there's a lot of interesting elements on how people went to the Amazon and they were living there and transforming it way before time. Also, we can discuss what the kinds of globalization that already existed at the beginning of the 20th century, how global capital also began transforming different territories very early on. So, for example, one of the things that we are also going to explore is how water has been managed through the years, and particularly now, for example, the construction of dams, the construction of bridges, and how that transforms the lives of people who live in these regions, and how that also transforms our relationship with the landscape and with nature, right? What does it mean what does it mean for a river and for the peoples who live close to a river to begin suddenly living with a huge dam in the middle of the forest, for example, right? And how these dynamics of capital and globalization transforms the ways people, as Liliana was saying, also migrate or are forced outside of their lands, for example, right? So, and one of the things that we would like to discuss with you is also how to approach these issues, not just from different perspectives, right? How aesthetics and imagination and fantasy try to understand this and represent these huge changes in nature and in the people's lives, and also how what these changes consist of and what they mean for the actual lives of animals and peoples, right? So because we actually live always like sometimes in actual elements are changing, but we're also imagining and representing, and that imagination and that fantasy is also a key part of our daily lives, right? So yeah, that's one of the things that we will explore, how globalization affects and has affected the way we understand nature, the way we live in our environment, and how we think of the future, right? So it's very important. I think one of the main focus of our class will have to do with not just with the present, but also with, as also Liliana was suggesting, how many years, which changes will happen and when, and learn to project and to try to prevent some things from happening, or think about how some changes are or not are not inevitable, right? So Liliana,
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to. I mean, it's very exciting to have this completely complementary approach because, as Javier pointed out, we really work from two completely different angles. I'm all about the graphs and the numbers and the systems, and we cannot understand what is happening without fiction, without our imagination, right? Like without how imagination has shaped history, right, and has changed the way that we think about this. So just to sort of round out the learning units that we have, we definitely are going to be talking about the concept of the Anthropocene and history, and how the Anthropocene is of course a word that has a definite historical meaning, but also has a definition in the natural sciences where we're complementing each other. We're going to be talking about finance and trade because those are really important factors in our understanding of the contemporary globalization. There are proto-globalizations, as Javier was talking about in the Amazon, for example, around the world, but we have examples in the Amazon that are very clear of way before, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we already have the elements of globalization, some of the elements popping up. We're going to be talking about commodities and trading commodities and something called telecoupling. And telecoupling is the quantitative study of how this commodity trade has an impact on the ground in environmental terms. We could not teach a class like this. We could not have a class without talking about the climate crisis. And we're calling it a climate crisis. It's not just climate change. It's a climate crisis that we're facing. And what little time, as Javier says, fortunately, thanks to systems thinking and thanks to quantitative research, we actually have a very clear understanding of what's at stake right now and what are the factors that are playing into it. So it's actually a very predictive. We're going to talk about infrastructure and water. And of course, the elephant in the room. We're not meeting, we're not in a room, we're not even in the same place. We're each of us in a room. What's the elephant in the room? What's the elephant in the room? Anybody? We're all separated. No one?
Coronavirus?
Coronavirus, right, exactly. That's the elephant in the room. But coronavirus, see, that's fantastic. Thank you. But we have to ask which coronavirus, right? Because in 2003, we had SARS-CoV-1, right? And shortly after, right, like by 2012, we get MERS. And both of those are coronaviruses. And in reality, what's happening is that we have a biodiversity crisis that is intersecting with emerging infectious diseases, right? And that's why you heard about Zika, you heard about chikungunya, maybe some of you have heard about chikungunya, but Zika definitely, right? And you've heard, and what is happening? Why do we hear about these diseases and all of a sudden everybody's on high alert, right? Well, globalization plays a very important role in that, both because of this hunger for commodities and hunger for landscape changes, promoting contacts between people and populations, wild populations that have their own viruses, and because of the exchange, right? The inability to block these global exchanges in a way that can control the expansion of infectious disease. So we're actually going to couple those biodiversity crisis that Professor Levy was mentioning earlier with the emergent infectious diseases that we are witnessing so that we can, again, apply systems thinking to go beyond just saying, oh, look, it's all bad, to thinking, okay, so this is actually a solvable problem. It's got interconnected parts. Which ones are workable? Where do we have agency? What can we do about it? And the last unit, as I mentioned, is Amazonia. So these are all the different learning units, 7 learning units for our semester in the spring. And we're looking forward to seeing as many students as we can attract into our course, because we're going to have this amazing combination of science and social sciences and with humanities together in a single course.